do you really have still this problem in the US? I mean, in
No.
2020, we are still dealing with storms and the internet connection like in the 80s. I mean, it's crazy, you know.
Yeah.
That's I had this problem. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think that the competition now is very, very harsh. And we have a lot of players. You know, the most visible are AMD and Intel, but actually also Nvidia and others are eating, you know, the Intel's cake here because, you know, also, also last week we talked about accelerators. So all this new technology to improve the efficiency of the data center, especially in large installations, are eating, more of these CPU use cases. I mean, general purpose CPU are less important than in the past. Let's say that, okay. And we are seeing more and more adoption of accelerator. That said, AMD CPUs are crazy, in terms of everything. I mean, they already support PCI Gen 4, they have more PCI lanes, they have, how many, they are just better in this moment. I mean, you can't avoid a, direct comparison somehow. And, and I think they are better positioned. Then again, there are multiple factors, I think, and not just the chip, the CPU itself.
AMD does a good job. AMD loves being the underdog in the CPU race. I think it's a fantastic thing. I love it when um, you see companies, you see basically this competition, because the competition just spurs on more and more innovation within the industry. It's interesting though that sales. I mean, both of these guys, they sell CPUs. It's really comes down to the OEMs that are actually building stuff on top of their platforms. And I think this is showing that a lot of the OEMs, the HPs, the Dells, the Supermicros, all of the other box manufacturers of the world are really they like this Epic chip, and they are building platforms and systems around it. And that's what we're effectively seeing. The investment that I think they made from an OEM perspective last year, you're starting to see that come to fruition, that hey, they're shipping these platforms that they worked with the OEMs to build. I think it's a great thing for the industry.
Yeah,
Very.
and if you
Sorry, Enrico. Please.
no, if you think that last week we saw Scality launching, so this week, sorry, launching a new product, Artesca, and HP that was part of the launch and has a 6 month agreement with an exclusivity with Scality had both AMD and Intel in. I mean, if you think about it, 2 years ago was not even something that you would think about. I mean, that's Intel usually. Now, you have options. And so I think that competition is really, really tough at the moment.
Yeah, and Enrico, I know the guys at Scality really well, but I know that they come out with this new platform as well. What is it, Artesca or something? The Scality Artesca
Yeah, so
platform. What is that?
this is an object store that is developed on top of Kubernetes. Okay, you can think about it as an enterprise version of MinIO. Okay, so while MinIO starts from developers and tries to get some appeal in the enterprise space, now Scality is taking advantage of its enterprise legacy and is trying to go becoming more appealing to developers. But the idea, the principle of behind Artesca are very similar. So based on Kubernetes, object storage only, very scalable, but that can start very small, high performance. Everything you can think of about modern object store. So starting at the edge with up to multi-petabyte scale, data management integrated. I mean, from my point of view, was quite impressive. Okay, and it's a good competitor for let's say MinIO, but others that are in the same path, like Object Scale from EMC and other similar solutions that are now popping up practically everywhere. I mean, everybody wants to have this new deployment architecture. So also because we are talking about scale out systems, and most of the orchestration in the backend is already configured in microservices. So you have plenty of these small applications running inside an object storage cluster. So they just offloaded some of this directly to Kubernetes. So it's an intelligent way to design a modern object store from my point of view.
And then didn't they with that as well? They're doing kind of a developer version as well, right? Where you can get up to like 50 terabytes free or something like that.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I mean, 50 terabyte for object storage doesn't sound a lot, but actually it's huge. I mean, so to start with an object store with 50 terabyte, especially both if you are an SMB or a developer, can cover a lot of use cases. So I think it was smart, especially because they have this agreement with HPE, so that for the 4 months they have HPE selling the product with an exclusive agreement, and so that they have the developer version, the exclusivity with HPE that will push hard to sell the product with their servers. So they did it right. I mean, from the perspective of having a product that can ramp up quickly in terms of number of customers, they did it right. I mean, we don't know yet how stable it is or if there are any other problem. The presentation was great. It looked solid, all the dashboards, the possibility to use Prometheus, but actually with a good interface already available. Because just to be clear, I mean, if you come from the Kubernetes environment, Prometheus is the thing. But if you are not in the Kubernetes or in large infrastructure like an SMB or at the edge, maybe having an integrated analytics interface is good enough or even better. So I think that from this point of view, it was good. And there are some features that are dedicated at caching or proxying data. So you can use this object store at the edge, storing data locally and having policies to promote or move data to the core. So maybe after doing some operations on it and things like that. So, I mean, that's a good proposition. I liked it, and I think we will have more on this in the future months.
Yeah. Well, let me break in here real quick and just point out something kind of in GigaOm terms. Enrico, you've written several key criteria reports on Kubernetes data storage, object storage, all of these topics. And when we do the key criteria, we divide it into kind of three areas. We have the table stakes, the key criteria, and emerging technology. Now, emerging technology, very obvious, is that's what's coming down the line. Key criteria is where companies can differentiate themselves from one another, really pull ahead of the pack, or perhaps show themselves as being a little more niche for specific use cases. Table stakes are the things that we expect a technology to have if they're going to be viable at all. I often use the example, air conditioning in a car when you live in Texas. That is not an option, that is necessary. And I say that from personal experience, by the way. You have here mentioned that Kubernetes underneath object stores is becoming a table stake. Now that's important because when we look at all these things, we do so acknowledging that as time goes on, things that are emerging technology will become key criteria. Things that are key criteria will become table stakes. Now you have that mentioned here under Scality, Artesca. Do you believe that Kubernetes underneath object stores is going to edge out some companies, that companies aren't going to keep up, or do you believe that everyone is just going to have to adopt this?
So when we publish the object storage reports this year, we make a distinction between enterprise or traditional object stores and high performance object stores. And in the future, we will see more and more traditional object stores moving towards the domain of high performance object stores. There is a need for consolidation of workloads, for multiple workloads in parallel, etc., etc. So this, and also multi-cloud, so more flexibility in general. Okay, these object stores will sure adopt this kind of deployment. Okay, so Kubernetes underneath and a set of microservices on top. But it's also true that it's not that tomorrow we will some other workloads will disappear, archiving and things like that. So if it's a very static environment, maybe having Kubernetes to manage your object store doesn't make any sense. I mean, so that's I think that in general we will still have object stores that are more traditional in design and in workloads that they can manage, but the majority of players will move to Kubernetes and things like that.
Now, the last bit of news we want to talk about is basically it's financial. I wanted to avoid it, but you won't let me. We have to talk about the money aspect of technology. Mostly, Amazon Web Services posted a record $13.5 billion in profits for 2020. Now, the article I'm looking at has asterisks around profits, so I'm not sure if that's for emphasis or if it's profits. I'm hoping, Jason, you can kind of explain that to me and maybe talk a little bit about what this means.
Yeah, they kind of posted up the 6-year financials of AWS, and overall the sales, I mean, they're growing at just these exorbitant rates. The last quarter they were over 12.5 billion, and basically during this entire time they've been driving up the operating profit as well. Which is that means they're making the data centers more efficient. Normally, you're going to see that sales, you're going to see the sales rise, but typically your operating profit, you want it to go up, but the rate at which it's going up is astounding. And when you look at the overall kind of that market share trend, which is, I think this is interesting. Enrico, you and I were talking about this before. What's interesting is like Amazon's got a third of the market, right? That's absolutely insane. And they're holding on to that third of the market pretty well. A lot of the others, when you think of it's funny because they've got Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Alibaba, and IBM.
I'll
IBM
bring
has
the
been steadily declining.
yeah, I'll bring up the chart there.
Yeah. This is a great chart. IBM has been steadily declining. Google and Alibaba have been steadily growing. Amazon's remained flat. Microsoft is really on a tear in market share growth. They went from kind of the 10%. They were kind of the number two, where Amazon was like 30%, and they went from 10% to 20%, while all the others, right, basically every other quote cloud provider is on the decline. They're kind of following IBM's trajectory, when it comes to that. But Microsoft has honestly been on a tear, and it's interesting to see that Amazon really hasn't grown that much, but still, I mean, what a leadership position at a third of the market.
Well, my opinion is Microsoft is playing all its cards very, very well. I mean, they have a massive enterprise presence, and they are converting these customers to the cloud, to their cloud. Okay, it's also easy. There is a smooth transition path if you are a Microsoft customer to Microsoft services in the cloud. So that's I think that really counts. And also they are very friendly with partners, with all sorts of partners. I mean, technology partners, channel partners, whatever. So they want to succeed, but I think that the main difference between Amazon and Microsoft is this. I mean, Microsoft is trying to do it in the Microsoft way. So thinking about partners, thinking about solution developers, etc. Amazon is more concentrated on the user, and the Microsoft partners are partnering with Amazon partners are there because they need to be there, because Amazon is the leader, because it was a requirement from the users. So this is becoming less and less true. I mean, now many solutions have support for Microsoft and Amazon, so it's becoming harder and harder from this point of view. So I think that one, this is a two-horse race at the moment. I mean, even if Google is growing, Google is still losing a lot of money every quarter. So they're, yes, they are growing in market share, but it's not a good position. And for the rest, I mean, these two guys with different technology and approaches to the market, they are doing very well. But from my point of view, Microsoft closing the gap is almost all related to the fact that they are more appealing to more players in our market.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think the growth is, like, Microsoft has always had a very, very strong partner program, always, and they're leveraging that. And in leveraging that, that's where the actual growth is coming from. In that, when you look at it, like Google doesn't have a channel program, Alibaba doesn't have a channel program, and Amazon, honestly, they got a lot of the market share, but they're flat because they don't have a partner program. And if you want to grow, you'd say like the best way to grow is through good channel relationships.
Yeah, and also consider that Amazon demonstrated several times in the past that even if you partner with them, they try to copy your technology, or they find a way to put you out of the market.
Yeah, that's what drives that operating profit as well. Right?
yeah, indeed. I mean, maybe it's a winning strategy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's a different way to approach partners.
Right. Yep.
I think it's always interesting to see, if you look at this chart by itself, you wouldn't expect the headline to be reading that they posted record profits. It's always a fascinating thing to consider market share versus profitability versus all the other aspects to go into looking at the health of your business and the industry overall. That's actually the time we have for news today. I just want to mention a few things that GigaOm put out this last week. Namely, we have a new business technology impact report from William McKnight called Extra Credit. Today we will be posting a new solutions brief, solutions brief, not proof, regarding VMware. Because yesterday we had a webinar with VMware with David Linthicum and Andy Thurai on cloud observability. And we do have a webinar coming up, not next week, but the week after, on the 13th of May with Ioneer, which, Enrico, I believe you are going to be heading that webinar. So
about Kubernetes storage.
That'll be really fascinating. And yeah, Kubernetes storage. So it will, tie into some of the stuff we talked about today. With that, we are out of time. I want to thank both Enrico and Jason for joining me today. Jason Collier can be found on Twitter at Bocanuts, as you can see on the screen. And Enrico, you can be found at eSignoretti. Of course, you can always find us on Twitter at GigaOm, or find us at gigaom.com, where you can read our blog, sign up for webinars, listen to the Voices in Innovation podcast, or subscribe to our research, which will get you the full breadth of reports our analysts have written. For all your future forward advice, gigaom.com has you covered. Thank you, and have a great weekend.